Urbike logistics is at a crossroads. Our cities are more congested than ever, and environmental concerns demand urgent action. Last mile delivery, even if it represents a small part of the journey, it represents an important part of the cost, up to 40%, according to some studies. Regulations and demanding customers add to the complexity. A lot has been said and written about the last mile of B2C businesses. Numerous studies exist about impact of e-commerce, for example, and we wanted to understand the B2B part of the last mile. So therefore, we contacted around 100 businesses delivering professionals in urban area to understand their needs and challenges. Our report offers data-driven insight and actionable recommendations. Now, to dive deeper into those findings, I'm also very happy to introduce Renaud Sarrazin, my esteemed colleague, co-founder of urbike, like Delphine, that is already also, I think, with us today. Renaud, you have a PhD that you did with the Belgian Road Research Center, and you lead now the consultancy department of our cooperative urbike. Please share us some of the key findings of these studies.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Very happy to be here today. So indeed, as specialists in last mile delivery, it is and it was really essential for us to keep in touch with the organization of the sector and to better understand their needs, so that we can constantly refine our awareness of the current and future challenges in urban logistics. So that's why last year in 2024, we conducted a wide-ranging survey of Belgian companies active in urban logistics to assess their operational reality, their main current challenges, and those they predict for the future. So today, we are delighted to present you with the main results of this study. The report will be sent in French and Dutch at the end of this webinar, so feel free to deep dive into it, because you will only have a small summary of what we have observed. So I hope this will inspire you. And so let's start. First thing first, a few words about the panel of respondents. So as Philippe said, 100 of companies were approached, and 78 of them responded to the survey completely. So in order to draw up a fairly comprehensive overview of urban logistics, we did not want to interview solely companies in the transport and logistics sectors, even if they are about 20% of the respondents. But we also wanted to look at companies whose core business is not logistics. So our panel therefore represents around 10 different business sectors, including a high proportion of wholesalers, almost 30% of the respondents, which can be explained by the fact that the survey was widely relayed by federations and organizations such as APCAL and PIX Belgium, which are sponsors of this webinar, and which cater in particular for companies in this sector. In terms of company size, the majority of respondents were SMEs and large companies, like Rexel, Multipharma, Geodis, CEBEO, as you can see on the slide, but also a few startups and very small companies responded. Regarding the customer segments, the panel is composed of companies operating mainly in the B2B market. So this overrepresentation of the B2B can be explained by the fact that we gave priority to companies in this target group when distributing the survey. In fact, there are already been a number of recent studies on B2C, both to analyze consumer expectation and the development of new logistics services, whereas logistics in the B2B market has been relatively little studied. So that was really a wish for this study to keep a deep look on this customer segment. And finally, regarding the specialization of companies regarding last mile logistics, it is important to note that our panel is mainly made up of companies for whom last mile deliveries in urban areas represent only a portion of their activities. So only 6% of respondents specialize in the urban last mile, while all the other companies responding manage deliveries over larger and more diversified territories, peri-urban areas, rural areas, industrial zones, etc. So given the challenges of mobility and logistics in urban areas, we will see later in the webinar and more deeply in the report that this multi-territorial nature of logistics activities has repercussions on organizational strategies and on the challenges faced by the companies. So the first major difference between respondents concerns the way in which their logistics are organized. Indeed, whereas transport and logistics are part of the core business of only a fraction of respondents, 20% of the panel, as a reminder, we see clearly two categories of organization regarding the organization of logistics. The ones that internalize all or most of their activities, representing almost 60% of the panel, and those that outsource their logistics to service providers. So obviously there is no ideal solution, but there are compromises to be made between the advantages and limitations of each strategy. In particular, internalization generally allows greater control over processes, a closer relationship with customers, and the possibility of offering a highly personalized service to them. But on the other hand, internalization involves significant fixed costs for the fleet, infrastructure, human resources, etc., and makes the rollout of innovation slower and sometimes difficult if you don't have sufficient expertise in-house to deploy this innovation process. On the other hand, outsourcing makes it possible to vary many costs and to benefit more quickly from the latest technical innovation in the sector, for example, in deploying sustainable delivery solutions. However, outsourcing can entail risks in terms of loss of control and visibility over processes, of loss of quality of service offered to the customer with a lack of personification, for example, and responsiveness in adapting service to customer expectations daily. As regards the main transport and handling constraints which companies have to cope, we can see constraints linked to the goods, such as their fragile or voluminous nature, and other constraints linked to the executions of the service, such as respecting time slots, which is the main constraint for a majority of the panel, the urgent nature of certain deliveries, or the fact that you have to manage the unpredictability of demands. When we compare exposure to constraints according to organization mode of the respondents, it is interesting to note that internalization or outsourcing generates significant deviation on how the constraints are handled. With regard to the constraints linked to the nature of the goods, it's interesting to see that fragility is more of a concern for companies working with external service providers, essentially because of the fear of damage that could be caused to the goods, while the bulky nature, the voluminous nature of the goods is more of an issue for companies with internal management, essentially because they have to equip themselves with vehicles, equipment, and infrastructure adapted to managing this voluminous nature. In terms of other types of constraints linked to the operation of the deliveries, we can see systematically that the companies with in-house logistics feel the constraints more strongly than companies with outsourced management. That's the case, for example, for the temperature control or the unpredictability of demand, where we can see 13 to 19% of constraints felt more by the internal than the external mode of organization. The same observation can be made on exposure to time constraints, whether contractual time constraints such as respect of delivery slot imposed by shippers or receivers, or regulatory time constraints like delivery slot imposed by local regulation. Companies with an internal logistics organization model feel the impact of these constraints much more strongly than companies with outsourced management. For the strong impact, you can see on the two graphs that there is a ratio of 2.5 to 4 between in terms of how you felt the strong impact when you are externalized or internalized in terms of logistics strategy. Great. So now that we have described our panel, let's dive into the heart of the report. If we had to summarize the results in one sentence, it would be this: companies active in urban logistics are all looking for a balance between quality, efficiency, and sustainability. They are the three main pillars of urban logistics today by all the companies responding to the surveys. Looking at quality is mostly reflected in the report and in the survey as a customer service and an improved and personalized customer service. So we observe a strong trend regarding the search for a high quality of service among the respondents. And similarly to what we can observe in the B2C in terms of personalization of the service and taking into account the preferences of the recipients in terms of delivery time and address to be delivered if you are not there. The companies active in the B2B market are increasingly developing a personalized logistics services by taking into account the expectation of the end customers. Sometimes it leads to tailor-made logistics service, but most of the times it leads to including additional services when delivering the goods. So delivery on the floor or in a specific area, doing activities before the delivery, such as picking, assembling, or stuff like that, or after the deliveries, like scheduling goods, or doing sales and marketing services after the delivering being done. In terms of the most important criteria for quality customer service, we see three main criteria being transparency, customer support, and predictability. And quite surprisingly, the image of the delivery service is not really seen as a lever to increase the quality or how the quality of the delivery is perceived by the recipients. I won't go through too much into details there, but it's interesting for the future of logistics, maybe to decompartmentalize this image with logistic activity. The second strong aspect in the delivery offer, the delivery service for urban logistics, is the issue of the efficiency. And efficiency challenged by both the territorial challenge and the operational challenge. Looking at the territorial efficiency challenge, it's very clear that most of the companies are suffering from accessibility issues, traffic congestions, difficulties to find parking or to unload the goods efficiently. It's clear that 2/3 of the respondents really put this main constraint are the top priority and the top issues for their own activities. And what is interesting is to see that there is a strong deviation when looking at organization with an internal or an external strategy to deal with logistic activity, which can be seen as the fact that when you are externalizing logistics to service providers, they know better than you do how to deal with accessibility issues, how to transform their logistic model or even their fleet of vehicles to better adapt to these last mile issues. However, there is plenty of solutions that we have developed in the report. We have given some example to go to the, if you go through the report, that can be deployed even by companies with an internal or external logistics, and that could give some lever to improve the accessibility, congestion, or parking issues. The second main concern about efficiency is linked to the fact to do the delivery, so the operational challenges. And there, it's quite interesting to see that we see different type of constraints emerging, such as the stress of the delivery driver, so the fact that it will affect the quality of the job for the driver, and that could lead in the end to turnover and to issues to find people to do that job in urban areas. We will come back to this later in the future of logistics. And then there is some other issues such as fines, delays, accidents that affect the efficiency and the good realization of logistics. And then there is maybe one item that I would like to highlight is the issue of profitability of urban delivery. We often observe that companies like the one of the panel doing urban deliveries and other kind of deliveries for their own logistics, they don't always know the real cost of this urban last mile. There is a lack of knowledge in terms of how much it costs really, and what are the solutions that I can implement in order to reduce that cost for this urban last mile. And as Philippe said, these last mile deliveries in urban area could cost up to 40% of the full cost of the supply chain cost breakdown, so that there is really room for improvement on profitability if you are able to identify solutions that really fit with your needs and with the constraints of the territory, of the urban territory. So here again, in the report, I will give you the opportunity to look at many solutions that could be deployed to deal with efficiency and quality of service at the same time. And finally, as I said, the third main pillar of the urban logistics, according to the respondent, is sustainability. There is a widespread awareness of the challenges of sustainability by the companies of the panel, given that 90% of the respondents consider that reducing the carbon footprint of their logistics is an important strategic objective for the company. So it will really affect the decision, the strategic orientation, and so on. And even for 30% of the respondents, it's an absolute priority. So there is no decision that is made on logistic topics if it go at the opposite of reducing carbon footprint. So there is a widespread awareness, and everyone knows that it's a no-brainer. We have to find solution to reduce, to improve the sustainability of the last mile logistics. However, when focusing on deploying solution, we see that there is a cognitive dissonance linked to the difficulty to get into action because of all the costs and the investment to be made to deploy sustainable solutions. And this is even clearer when we are comparing companies with an internal logistic process and an external logistic process. All the costs and need for investment are harder to support when you deal your logistics internally, so that we see a big gap between the awareness and the willingness to deploy solution on the field clearly. In our opinion, it reflects that there is a need to be supported, to find solution, to spread solution and good practices to support companies active in urban logistics in finding the proper solution to deal with sustainability simultaneously of efficiency and quality.
Thank you, Renaud. Thank you very much for that insight overview. Now, let's bring Wim back into the conversation. Wim, your real-world experience, you are hands-on now, and the experience you have at CEBEO offers a valuable perspective on the challenges and successes of implementing sustainable urban logistics solutions. So just to start, can you just explain us a bit what does CEBEO?
Yeah, well, CEBEO is Belgium's leading B2B distributor of electrotechnical materials with 50 plus branches, e-commerce, and robust logistics networks. CEBEO operates from a new state-of-the-art distribution center in Blandin. Our transportation networks covers all of Belgium. We use our own fleets together with dedicated partners. CEBEO manages 3 main flows: daytime distribution with about 40,000 plus stops per month that we do from 5 hubs. And then we also have night and direct transports, which are about 1,500 and 700 stops per month. And those flows start from our central distribution center in Blandin.
Okay, interesting. And what could you just describe the variety of goods that you handle at CEBEO?
Well, we have a very wide range of shipping units, ranging from packages, spools, Euro pallets, industrial pallets, oversized pallets, and also lengths up to 6 meters. In our day distribution or last mile, we have about 85 vehicles on the roads every day. And we have everything in the range from bicycle up to trailer tractor combination.
Yes, as we see on the picture. And Renaud spoke about internalizing and externalizing transport activities within a company that is not its main core business. I remember the first call we had when you were when you just joined CEBEO. You told me explicitly in the conversation that you were in charge of the transport, and that it was a fresh decision of the management of CEBEO, of the direction, to re-internalize the transport activities. Can you explain why and what were the drivers behind this solution, this strategy?
Well, I remember my call when I started. It was in 2020, but I just came in CEBEO. But until 2017, all transportation was completely outsourced. In 2017, we took over Shanes and Claesson, that were 2 competitors in our sector. And those 2 companies had their own transport company or transportation. And then we decided to continue this because it became clear for us that having our own transport can bring added value. And in addition, also one of the subcontractors of Shanes sold his company at that moment because he had no competitor or successor, sorry. So that's why the reason we started with our own transport.
Okay, and if you had to take a conclusion about it for a moment so far, was it a good decision?
Well, it's a very good decision, to my opinion. Having own transport and means that you have more control and then more focus on continuous quality and service. Things we lacked at that time with the 3PL player we worked with. We try always to have a driver, the same driver in the same region. This is because for customers, a familiar face is a basis of trust. And in our business, it's a big, it's needed because a lot of customers are not present during the day when we do the delivery. And in most cases, our drivers have the keys or codes to enter the client's premises.
Okay, so we can say it was a success.
Well, it's a success when you have that. If you need that to be able to provide you that kind of trust, it was certainly not obvious to set it up. Like you said, it was not our core business. We needed to bring the right people on board to build on the basis what was already there, but also develop a strategy for the future. And we had to get all the stakeholders on board to make it a success. It was sometimes trial and error, and a lot of learning from mistakes. But ultimately, we had to prove ourselves in our organization because we needed to prove ourselves If we did worse than a 3PL player,
Yeah.
our existence would not be validated. So in terms of costs, we also had to do better as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you did it.
We did, yeah, luckily.
Excellent. And when you completed the survey, you mentioned that you were delivering in regularly in every Belgian city.
Yeah.
How do you organize then the city, the logistics in urban area, and what are the limitations that you are facing?
Well, a lot of deliveries that we do are indeed urban deliveries. So city logistics for us is a puzzle, especially when we have the diverse shipping units that we have. Our planners use dynamic route planning, and the biggest challenge for us is accessibility with different types of vehicles, also with larger items which need to be delivered in congested areas.
Yeah. Okay. And the fact that you have dedicated transportation, so it helped you to have a better control on the quality, you said, but how can it help you to address the last mile challenges, especially?
Well, it's given us a greater agility. We can really quickly adapt to the changing demands and customer expectations, because we have some demanding customers.
Yeah.
And for example, we have much more tighter delivery windows, 24-hour service, and so on and so on. So we need to adapt very quickly to the needs of our customers.
Yeah. Okay. We spoke then. Renaud spoke about 3 pillars. We spoke about quality and efficiency, but you also answered in the survey about the importance of sustainability. So you mentioned that reducing the carbon footprint for your logistic activities was a high priority strategic objective for your company. Can you tell a bit more about that?
Well, you're right, Philippe, to point that out. For me, sustainability and efficiency go hand in hand. So less driving is less pollution.
Okay.
But it's not only about cost saving. Our group, Sonipar, has a strong commitment to ethical, social, and cultural and environmental responsibility. And we are actively working to reduce our impact. And that's a big part of what motivated our partnership with urbike for urban deliveries. We saw opportunity to improve both efficiency and sustainability in our last mile operation.
Yeah, but let's speak then about that, because you were internalizing, but at the end you have a kind of hybrid approach for the last time. So if we speak about this collaboration with Cycle Logistics, what's the thinking behind that?
Well, there were two major reasons. The first one, we wanted to completely reduce our environmental footprint. And secondly, we wanted to organize our stops in the center of Brussels more efficiently. We have one of the things we monitor is the stops per hour per type of vehicle.
Okay.
And what we saw is that in downtown Brussels, we scored very low, below the averages, because of the known problems already addressed by Renault: traffic jams, accessibility, lack of parking space. That's why we started with urbike. Initially, it started as a pilot project, but soon, to our own surprise, we found out that we could deliver twice as many stops with a bicycle courier than with a regular van. And next to that, urbike provides its good delivery performance. And this is the result of people knowing the city in and out because they live there. And also the fact that urbike invested in training their couriers to follow our business needs was also very good in that regards. And now we have regular business reviews to follow up our partnership, as you know. And at urbike, we were able to tick off what we were looking for, and already addressed also by Renault was quality, efficiency, and sustainability.
Excellent. Thank you for that. It's interesting to note also the fact that you are actually calculating the indicators, quality indicators, based not only on last mile, but on different areas. When you said the numbers were not good in Brussels, it shows how far you go in the analysis. I think it's very interesting. Just before we give the mic back to Renaud, that will shape the future of urban delivery. What's your vision of the future of urban delivery?
Well, we talked about it already before. I think delivering in cities will only get more tougher. Congestion is worsening, although I did not have any congestion today to come here. Circulation plans are complex, often misaligned, and regulations are constantly evolving. The paradox, of course, is that everybody wants to go to the city to do shopping, but nobody wants to see the truck there that makes it possible. And I think we need absolutely to find sustainable alternatives. We need to find a better way, one that balances the needs of consumers, businesses, and the environment. And that means exploring innovative solutions and, frankly, collaborating more effectively. What I also see is that the rising costs combined or associated with electrification, labor costs, and driver shortages will also require creative approaches. Smaller players will, I think, find it likely particularly tough to navigate these challenges alone. And therefore, I think partnerships and shared resources will be the key to success.
I like it. Thank you, Wim. Renaud, perhaps you can conclude with a view on what's next, what we can expect for tomorrow in this sector.
Yes, certainly. Thank you for this very interesting discussion. As we saw in the first part of this webinar, urban logistics is challenging. The challenges are multiple. We discussed about the continued search for quality and the trend towards the personalization of the delivery service, the efficiency issues inherent to the difficulties of access of the territories, the constraints imposed by local regulation, and the consequences of the deterioration of delivery conditions, but also the great challenge of the sustainable transition in the sector. But what about the future? What are the priorities and concerns of companies for the coming years? Will the main markers or pillars of today's urban logistics be relevant in the future? And what will be the most promising solutions to support companies in their transition? As part of this survey, and in addition to providing an overview of urban logistics today, we also wanted to question companies about their vision of the future. So first, we looked at the aspect of their current service that companies wanted to improve as a priority in the short or medium term. It's quite interesting, and in my opinion, it really reflects the attitude of the companies regarding urban logistics, maybe even in the B2B market, that's in B2C, is that the main aspect to be improved as a priority is still quality. It's still customer satisfaction, punctuality, first-time success rate for the deliveries. So there is really this willingness to improve the service quality as a differentiation with the competitors. And because in the B2B market, there is this specificity of offering a logistics service, which is the continuity of the relationship that you have with your customers and that the goods that you deliver to them. A second interesting observation is that the environmental impact comes just after the quality. So a third of the respondents consider that improving the environmental impact of the deliveries is still a priority and should be pursued in the short or medium term. And then the last and maybe most surprising information is that profitability seems to be a priority, but not the top one. So there is this very long-term vision to consider quality as the top priority of improvement way before profitability. This could be seen as the fact that the companies see all the positive aspects of improving quality and environmental impact, and are able to pay the price for this transition and this search for improvement in the quality. Or maybe the second part of the respondent doesn't really know how much it costs and how inefficient it is in terms of profitability. And maybe that there is a need of looking more deeper on the real cost, maybe to shift to other more profitable and efficient solutions. A second aspect regarding the future of urban logistics was to look at the main constraints, the main concerns of the companies for the future. So it is interesting to observe that several themes already depicted in the portrait of today's urban logistics are cited again, such as restrictive mobility plan and congestion issues, intensification of access restriction, which were really on the top of the concern for today's logistics, and that are still main issues for the company. So there is really companies are looking for solution and for clarification, even in terms of political view. We see also the European and local policies that are concerns for the companies. We see some uncertainty in the European and local policies. We could talk about the low emission zone, the CSRD policies. We don't really know what is happening. Will it happen or not? Which will be postponed? And other European policies, such as the system ETS2 at the European scale, that will in 2028 impose a carbon tax to the transport and logistics activities that could really affect the efficiency and the supportability of the cost for the logistic activity. And then there is some other concerns, quite new in this survey, linked to, for example, the rising of energy costs. So conducting logistic activities is not only putting fuel in a van or a truck, if you are using conventional logistic solution, but there is the issues of the infrastructure, of the warehouses, and so on. And during the last past year, we all felt the impact of the rising energy cost. And we see that in the sector, there is a strong concern in terms of searching for more efficient solution from a pure energetical point of view. And then a second aspect, which is quite important to highlight, is the concern of the company regarding the shortage of drivers and the high turnover. We have observed in the long distance logistics that there is a lack of driver to drive the big trucks. And in the last mile logistics, we see that trend of having difficulties to find drivers able to conduct the last mile deliveries. We were discussing when depicting the portrait of urban logistics today, that the stress of the drivers was a strong constraints and the strong operational issues for the company. And it might lead to these issues of high turnover and shortage of drivers that are really not compatible with the seek of high quality personalization, the same driver every time, and this kind of trends in terms of quality. So there is some way of understanding of why shortage of drivers might become a true concern for companies in the future, and why there is something to do about that. But the future is not only fear and concern. We asked the respondents also what was the portrait robot of the ideal delivery service in their opinion. And it's interesting to say that the main markers of today's logistics, being quality, efficiency, and sustainability, are still in the top position. So there are strong pillars on which the companies of the sectors are relying. And we see that even in the future, the top quality and ideal delivery service should include at least these three pillars. And then it's quite interesting to see that there is some other items emerging, such as companies are looking for better transparency and simplicity in the logistic processes. even when dealing internally and externally with the logistics. So there is a lot behind that about the interoperability of the softwares, of the optimization solution. There is everything about flow management and digitalization. We see that when we are talking about transition and transformation of the logistics and how companies are dealing with logistics, there is a digital transformation too. And then the last item is the image. It's quite interesting to see that companies are not considering to use their logistics service as a lever to communicate on the values of the companies, on the initiative, the positive initiatives of the companies regarding sustainability, transition, working condition of the drivers, or social responsibility of the company. While we truly think that there is an opportunity there to decompartmentalize the technical aspect of the logistics with the positive image that could come with it. So there is many examples of companies using these positive initiatives to communicate on how responsible they are and how many efforts they do in terms of sustainable transition. And there is probably something to decompartmentalize there in terms of marketing, efficiency, cost analysis, logistics, and so on. So it's a call for improvement there for the panel. But then what might be the most interesting solution to drive this transition and to seek for reliability, efficiency, and sustainability? As experts in cycle logistics, it was not possible not to talk about the potential of cycle logistics, how strong it is as a solution and its limits too. Last year, 2 years ago, we were conducting a wide research based on the data of our deliveries in Brussels conducted with cargo bikes. And we made some comparison with vans deliveries in Brussels. And we observed, as Wim said, for the CEBEO performance, the delivery performance, that a cargo bikes was able to do twice as many stops as a van for the same rounds and the same amount of goods. So in the areas with traffic jam, congestion, accessibility issues, and so on, cargo bikes is truly a solution with a very strong potential. And even in terms of speed, we have observed that a cargo bike is not really affected by the urban environment, being in the narrow street of the city center of Brussels or Leuven, in the pedestrian areas of Ghent, or even in the suburbs and residential areas in Antwerp. We see that the average speed is always the same with the cargo bikes, meaning that we are not affected by the peak hours, the time constraints, and so on. While a van is really affected by that. And we have observed that a cargo bike is on average 45% faster than vans to deliver goods in city centers. So there is a strong potential. If you are interested on this database way of looking at delivery efficiency, I truly recommend to register to the next webinar of the Belgian Cycle Logistics Federation, which has conducted last year an extensive analysis on the data on many operators, logistics operators in Belgium, having both only cargo bikes fleet or mixed fleet of cargo bikes and vans. So they've made more or less the same kind of analysis, but on a larger data set. And on the 11th of March, they are organizing a webinar to present the results. I had a sneak preview of the main trends, and it's really, really interesting. So shout out to the BCLF, register to their webinar. It's going to be really interesting, I'm sure. But cycle logistics is also comes with limits. One of the limits is the narrower field of application in terms of coverage area. So we know today that the optimal coverage area of cargo bikes fleets are about 5 kilometers. It depends on a lot of factors, but it doesn't matter. so that cycle logistics companies like urbike have to find the proper model to offer delivery service with cargo bikes on wider areas, like in the Brussels region, which is closely linked to the needs of micro hub, urban hubs, urban infrastructure to be able to deploy this model. And I will go a step further. Cycle logistics cannot be deployed in silo. We have really to work together to develop collaborative logistics and to use the best vehicle where it performs the best. The example of CEBEO that Wim and Philippe were discussing about is a perfect example of that. Cargo bikes cannot do everything, but they may be very, very efficient in the areas where vans and trucks are competing to keep good KPIs. But to deploy efficiently cargo bikes fleet, we have to work together and to find interoperability and collaborative views for the logistics in the future. And that will be my main conclusion. I will leave to Philippe the closure of this webinar.
Thank you, Renaud. Really insightful presentation. Thanks a lot also for having coordinated the redaction of this very interesting reports. I recommend you to read it, to dive in it, and don't hesitate to come back if you have any question about it. And it's clear that we see that urban logistics, like our world actually, is facing significant challenges. But for me, if I have to keep a way to see a future that's bright, I would mention the collaboration, like Wim explained, and also this considering the long-term impacts of our actions and the decisions we take. Let's hope that it will manage and help us to work in a very sustainable way all together. It's interesting also I was listening to Renaud, like you, and we're focusing a lot on the transport of goods today. But there is certainly a very big potential for the transport of services in the city, in the urban area. So why not having a topic about that for the next webinar? Let's see. Okay, Wim, thanks again for your time, for sharing your valuable insights and experiences. Thank you for CEBEO. And yes, I hope that the approach you have to organize urban logistics will be inspiring for other companies that are following us now. I would like to thank our partners, Apcal, Pix Belgium, for their support. Of course, a big thank for you all that joined us today. You were 75 around. I hope we found this webinar informative and inspiring. We will be, like Renaud said, we will be sharing the full reports with all of you. And this report will also be available in the libraries of Ville and Logistics in Wallonia. Thank both of you for that. Voila, before ending, again, don't forget, if you are interested by cycle logistics and the enormous potential it has to transform the cities, have a look and follow and register for this webinar from the BCLF on the 11th of March. I've seen the link to register in the comments, so don't hesitate and subscribe. For the rest, I would say, but let's keep in touch. If you found it interesting, if you have any question regarding your own organization, we would be happy to answer your question if we can. At least we would be very happy to help. We can share the slides. I think we can share the slides. Renaud said yes, and that's a good answer. I don't know if there are any other question or remark. I've seen Marie that raised hands. I don't know if you want to tell anything, Marie, more than what we said about this?
No, it was a false manipulation. Sorry. Just wanted to clap.
But that's also very good. Okay, thank you all. We have all 8 minutes, so it's good for the first webinar. We are on time. We were very afraid to make it 2 hours time. So don't hesitate to give us feedback about what was good, what can be improved. We would be very happy to read this, to hear this. And thank you very much for your presence. And let's hope to see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.